Now, this is a neat session that we're just going to finish off today with, a chance for you to connect with the leadership of our organisation and to just hear a little bit about their lived experience around celiac disease and with the organisation. On the far end is our new superstar, if not to be described the angel that has arrived at Coeliac New Zealand, mainly because we helped her, or Coeliac New Zealand, not me personally. Mind you, the offer's always there, Rosie, if you need any help and how to MC or, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot I could learn.
I have got a lot to teach, yes, sorry. Especially on the makeup, but I'm going to tone it back. But anyhow, sorry, enough about me. Unless, should we go? No, okay, not any more about me. But Rosie, actually, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
16.
16. Ooh, it's hard just being 16, let alone being diagnosed 16. And so you were involved with Coeliac New Zealand and sort of returning the favour now. And yep, and I understand you've now graduated from Otago University. Well done. Excellent. I hope you didn't behave as badly as Bob did down there, we heard earlier. But and you understand the curveballs that it throws, but you're now working as a corporate finance analyst.
That's right. Thanks, Sam.
Good work, yeah.
Thanks.
So you're going to introduce the team?
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks for the introduction. So we've got a bit of a board panel going here. So we'll have Jenny and Max speak first, and then we'll open the floor to some more Q&A. So first to introduce Jenny. So Jenny has an illustrious business career behind her, working in all sorts of industries, including rail in New Zealand and Australia, sawmill operations in New Zealand, and also lots of project management and policy development and implementation. So she's an absolute weapon to have on our board here. She's been a member of Coeliac New Zealand since 1986, and it said that CNZ made a huge difference for her at the time. So now, after retiring from her busy career, she's contributing greatly to our board with all sorts of great advice. She's particularly interested in helping those with dermatitis herpetiformis, and is going to speak on her experience with that today. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Rosie. So good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is about my journey with dermatitis or DH. I'm going to read mostly, because we've got a very tight time frame. So while I was pregnant in 1977, I developed a blistery and very itchy rash on my thighs, buttocks and chest. And my doctor diagnosed it as being a hormonal rash. And it seemed he was correct, because as soon as I delivered my daughter, within weeks my skin was clear again. But 6 months later I fell pregnant again, and I knew my skin had broken out and it never went away. So after a year with my skin getting worse, I was sent to a dermatologist who immediately diagnosed the DH, and this was in 1980. So at this time there was still some uncertainty about what caused DH, and there was no general understanding that it was linked to celiac disease or gluten. So despite my dermatologist prescribing everything she could find in medical journals that might help, my skin became progressively worse over the next couple of years. And we'd tried medication for gout, high cholesterol, old-fashioned sulphur drugs. I used to soak daily in a pine tassel bath, which stinks, other lotions and potions, and even 6 months following a gluten-free diet. And sometimes these cures would make me so sick, so I'd be so unwell that I couldn't even stand up, and that's not good when you've got 2 little children. And none of these treatments made the slightest bit of difference, and in fact my skin got worse. So by 1981 I was covered from top to toe in nasty lesions that looked like school sores. In fact, they were impetiginized. I had blisters on my tongue. I was on a permanent dose of antibiotics, and it would take me nearly 2 hours to have a shower in the morning, because I'd have to wander around waiting for my skin to dry and the scabs to dry before I could get dressed. And I'd take changes of clothes to work in case I bumped and would bleed. So it was pretty awful. In 1982, the dermatologist discovered dapsone, And so she explained that this was usually used for leprosy, and I did feel like a leper. So I needed weekly blood tests to ensure that my white blood cell count was maintained at a healthy level. But other than that, this turned out to be a wonder drug. Within a week, my skin was almost clear, and I soon stopped taking the antibiotics. I started on a high dosage of dapsone, which was gradually being reduced to find the right maintenance dose for me, when I suddenly developed this whole raft of side effects and ended up as a hospital case. So that was the end of me taking dapsone, and of course the skin lesions came back. In 1983, my family and I embarked on 3 years of travel in the USA and Europe. My skin was an all-over mess, but thankfully I never had any lesions on my face, so I seemed to be able to cope. But I was still taking antibiotics every day. On my return to New Zealand in '86, I went back to my dermatologist, who said it was now certain that DH was linked to gluten and that it could take up to 3 years on a gluten-free diet for my skin to become completely clear. And so after absorbing that this was a lifelong condition and treatment, I said I wanted to try the dapsone again. I just couldn't bear the thought of another 3 years of living with that insanely itchy rash. So my GP and dermatologist were not keen, but I said, what about if I start on a tiny, tiny dose and see if it makes a difference while I'm waiting for that gluten-free diet to work? And they reluctantly agreed. But I had to go and sit in the doctor's surgery before I took this tiny crumb of a tablet, sit there for 4 hours waiting to see if I was going to react. I did slightly, but it was not bad. Anyway, it was like somebody had waved the magic wand again and my skin became clear, and I didn't have any really bad side effects. So I was tolerating the dapsone. I could keep taking that while I was waiting for the diet to work. So on receiving the news about needing to be gluten-free, I immediately joined the Coeliac Society. And this was the best thing that I could have done to adjust to this new gluten-free world. There was no food labelling. I didn't know what I didn't know. In 1986, nobody had even heard of gluten. There was no GF products in the shops, but I could get a specialist's prescription to go to the hospital pharmacy only. No pharmacies in the streets. To get macaroni, baking mix, polystyrene crustkits, potato flour, all made in Italy. You could build a house out of the bread that I was making. It was revolting. Even the Labrador wouldn't eat it. So it was a rocky road. But it was not helpful either that, other than the skin, I was really asymptomatic. But I know now that even though I thought I was being really strict, that I was inadvertently consuming some gluten along the way, but the dapsone was keeping my skin under control. So fast forward to the 21st century, the number and variety of gluten-free products available has expanded exponentially, and food labelling is now much more detailed and regulated. My skin is reliably clear. I have confidence that my GF diet is indeed strict. And quite some years ago now, I stopped taking the dapsone. One thing that's different now is that I do react if I have gluten, and the odd lesion will develop on my skin. I'm always thankful, though, that I have a disorder that I can control quite simply, really, with my diet. And there are many others who are not so fortunate. I am fit and healthy and have lots more adventures on my bucket list that I intend to tick off. And gluten-free is not going to be an impediment. So I've maintained my membership with CNZ since '86. I also joined Coeliac Australia for the 11 years that I was there working. And both organisations do tremendous work to provide support and information to those of us who must live without gluten. And I'm honoured to now have the opportunity to assist CNZ in the work the organisation does in making a difference for those of us who have to live gluten-free. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. That's great to hear from you. We'll also introduce Max, who's also on the board. Max is a policy analyst who owns his own business doing consulting. He was diagnosed by biopsy in 2007 and is interested in encouraging earlier and improved diagnosis rates for all people with celiac disease. As a celiac for life, he believes that retaining and extending our membership base and working together is critical to effective advocacy, as is having a strong national voice and organisation. Max is going to talk to us today about the social impacts of celiac disease, which I'm sure so many of us in the room can relate to. So thanks, Max. Oh, just before Max starts as well, we've got a change in the QR code for the Q&A session. So if you just refer to the program, then you'll be able to see it indicates to which one aligns for this. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rosie, and hello, everyone. So I was asked to talk a little bit about social impacts of celiac disease, and I guess I can say with great certainty that I'm not an expert on this topic. So in some ways it's anecdotal. As Rosie mentioned, I was diagnosed in 2007, but I can share something about my own personal experience, and it has had a significant effect on me personally, and after consulting Dr. Google, apparently that effect is on many of us indeed, and we've heard some of that today. So I do feel socially impacted. I do have social anxiety, I would say, as well, but not today, interestingly, of course. So that's kind of a really nice thing. I've reflected on whether this is just me or how much it relates to me needing to keep to a strict gluten-free diet. And I think it's both of those things. There's anxiety around avoiding gluten. I have anxiety around having to explain myself to restaurant staff or friends, or feeling a burden to people. Another factor that I contemplated in my lay aspect is some of my effect a result of being celiac, that is the mind-gut connection, and Dr. Karen Feisandier spoke so eloquently about that. So indeed there is that kind of connection, and I don't doubt that I do have some effect of that kind, but I won't go any further into that. I just thought I'd ask who, just as a quick show of hands, who feels socially affected associated with being celiac and maintaining a gluten-free diet? It's a significant number. And in my own case, I avoided saying anxiety, but I would say I've got anxiety associated with that, which extends at times to even fear, I would say. So the ones I feel are, and you might want to add some to this, so these are the ones I feel. Frustration at my exclusion. I can't simply go to a bar or accept an offer of a beer with friends. Many cafes are not suitable for me. Sitting at a restaurant and not eating makes others feel uncomfortable, and me too. This wore me down as I did the South Island, particularly in the South Island, but I cycled the country on off-track a while ago, and some of you I know supported that, and thank you for that. But it wore me down going from place to place and not being able to participate, and others could. I don't like to stick out or be seen as fussing. Restaurant invitation sees a fear response in me and a dilemma that I must disclose I am celiac, try to explain, suggest a much more restricted selection of restaurant options. Casual suggestion of grabbing a bite generally can't work for me. Accepting hospitality is something I'm affected by. This can be culturally important as well. Breaking bread for me is complicated and stressful. Explaining can be non-comprehensible or even make it worse and even cause host discomfort. My greatest uncomfortable risk is when wonderful, supportive friends and family assure me they've prepared something gluten-free, especially for me. I really appreciate it, but then I've got a choice, and there can be pressure around that, and you feel terrible. In my case, I'll have 2 hours of stress wondering if I've had an effect or not, and I've been glutened by weakening in the past. I don't do it at all, but it's not very comfortable. The next one I've got is my own withdrawal from social situations, and I know Jenny, comments. She makes sure that the being gluten-free does not affect what she does, but that's a challenge. It's an ongoing working. For me, it's a work in progress. Avoidance. I'll just say no to potlucks, barbecues, etc. It's a stressful environment, and I don't want to go. Now, this one is a little bit hurtful, and I'll just put it out there. Being avoided. I think it's quite serious. It has happened to me, I'm pretty sure. You might not hear about it. You have to work it out. Hard to know. One example is things like ocean sailing, where taking me along is too complicated on a small yacht, for example. And we have to work our way through that. Travel, for me, I was a very much a traveller, very much off track. And I have to hit reset on that and realise I still can. There's plenty around the room, and we just have to do things a little bit differently. While I maintain a strict gluten-free diet, I'm still concerned. I nevertheless experience various things, hard to attribute to a different thing, but there's an underlying stress in me. And the last one I want to mention is simply losing some of me. Not that easygoing, carefree, and try every food sort of guy that it used to be. So I need to, again, hit reset. Is there any, I'll just give a moment, is there any sort of stunning thing that someone would like to add to that list out in the audience? Because I want to turn to something a little bit more positive. So that was sort of a little outline of... So coping strategies, and again, I note that some of the speakers earlier on, particularly Dr. Fai Sandia, commented on some of those, and very eloquently too. I found that enormously informative and valuable, and I'll go back to that, I think. So one of the things, and I was just reading around, acceptance, reaching a point of acceptance that life isn't how it was before, it's different now, but making the change within, learning to live with it. I'm 16 years since diagnosis and still a work in progress, so I note some of the comments earlier on by eloquent speakers about age-specific responses and how that changes over time. So I consider myself lucky that I was diagnosed after I'd done many things that would have been very, very difficult in my youth. I think participate, but simply don't put myself at risk. Say no or fly under the radar, take my own food, work with the willing. I call it leave footprints, and I think many of us do that. We go to cafes, restaurants, and we put our hand up, and it means that those of us who follow, we're not speaking alone, because someone spoke before about where the top shelf is and where the tongs are and how cross-contamination's avoided. And we've simply asked the question, even we know they don't provide any product whatsoever, and that's just raising awareness. I think another one I've got is I work to invest to create a safe environment with a few special people so that I can participate. So I actually make that investment so that I know I can go there and it's safe and they're going to leave out all the packets and they know it's serious and I can relax, but they're important people. So I've put the effort in there. Third-party intervention I mentioned. Sometimes it's taken so much more seriously if a partner or somebody else says, hang on a minute, he can't have that. He can't go anywhere near that. You guys need to be careful. And sometimes you get a bit tired, and having a supportive partner who's prepared to just step in and look after that, it's just a wonderful thing. I have that fortune. Have a safe place to put aside some of that discomfort. Our house is gluten-free, so is my boat now. Otherwise, I'm stressed, and I'm relaxed in that place, and you can make a big mess. There's no cross-contamination possible. I've got one safe place, and that I really value that so highly. In business, I have a cafe relationship. I can go somewhere where I don't have to talk about gluten-free because the cafe knows me, they're going to look after me, the order's going to be fine, I can work with the client, and that's been kind of set up. I had a wonderful one for a long time. It's a great, great thing. And here's one. I carry anti-nausea pills, otherwise my partner is stressed. And she checks all the time. We're going out to a restaurant. She becomes quite stressed if there's a concern like that. So others can be stressed. Travel, just do it, but prepare and understand it will be different. And then be part of a community, I think, is really important. I think I get at least as much as being from the board and from being with you than I ever managed to give. So we're here as a community, and today we're the majority. How often is that each year? So that's pretty special. So some positives there. I read a post recently that we won the lottery of autoimmune diseases. We can treat it simply with a strict gluten-free diet. So that's one good thing. I want to refer to the Wellbeing Journal, which was produced by our own very able Lisa Jury, and it's got a lot of very practical suggestions and things you can follow through. I think you can pick it up on the website, or you may well have it. The last couple of Coeliac New Zealand magazines were really great. They really had some fine information and links, and I saw Dr. Karen had some really good links too. And then I'll just say, and one in particular, which I've just had a look at in the last couple of days, mindovergut.com, which is a 5-week program created by an Associate Professor, Simon Knowles. It's been referred to before within the celiac information. So that's one I'm interested in having a look at. The last couple of things, focusing on what I have. Access to restaurants and social awareness is so much better now. I can still speak, I might say I could still walk, and that's just a metaphor to say we all have other things that we can celebrate. You know, we're just dealing with that dietary and health issue. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there, everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for sharing. We've had a few questions come through. So one question is about if 32% of restaurant gluten-free food actually contains gluten, what can we do when we go out? Is it a council issue, or is it that we need more celiac endorsement of venues?
Well, I'm happy to start on that. I know there's a lot of experts in the room as well, but I do place great weight on the dining out program opportunity, and Coeliac New Zealand's working really hard to see what we can do around uptake. That's the first thing. Second thing is that's a fearful percentage, and has made me today really think about that. I've been really reluctant to give up that social aspect. I really enjoy it. But my own coping strategy is I use a very, very limited number of restaurants who I've kind of put under the grill, so to speak, and looked at what they do, and we just stick with those. But I think I need to reconsider even that.
Yeah, I too find it quite difficult going to eat out, and I thought that 32% number was really scary. I hadn't thought of it being that high at all. And a little part of me says, oh, it was 2019, maybe it's better now. But the reality is it probably isn't. And I think we've been working on a checklist for members to use when they go to restaurants, and questions to ask, just to assure yourself that the restaurant is doing the right things. And we also have a subcommittee on the board where we're working through modifying the dining out program to some degree, so that we can make it a bit easier and less expensive for cafes and restaurants to qualify, if you like, for the accreditation. But a big focus on training of the staff within the eating establishments, so that they have a much better understanding. And so hopefully in time that 32% will be much reduced, but it is definitely a worry.
Great. We've got another question which actually might be best answered by our map, about follow-up with a specialist. Is that something that people should expect, and how do they kind of empower themselves to have ongoing follow-up with a specialist?
Thanks, Rosie. So absolutely, people need follow-up. Where that is, it needs to be somebody that knows about celiac disease, that understands about celiac disease. There's a Scandinavian and a British study showing that GP follow-up by somebody who knew what they were doing was just as effective as specialist follow-up. So you need follow-up, and you need to insist on the right follow-up, absolutely. But who it is, and New Zealand might differ a bit in terms of UK versus Scandinavia in terms of knowledge of people, but and I guess that's part of our role too, isn't it, in terms of making sure that people are aware and they know what the right follow-up is in our setting and our environment.
Thank you. We've got a question for the board, which is about what can we do to help influence Pharmac subsidy issues?
Excuse me, I've lost my voice. I can hardly talk. But I wonder, Andrew, did you want to comment on, it was your research fellows that did the survey? Oh, you got one?
Yeah, so Sophie, one of my PhD students recently initiated a study, and a number of you gave answers, and I think many hundred, in fact, gave answers, which was very helpful. Post-COVID and with other changes, Pharmac, or the access to the special authority, has diminished in terms of now 3 or 4 products only. We've thought for a long time that Pharmac is trying to run that down and get rid of the special authority, which in essence is happening. There's other factors to that in terms of the supply and the company supplying goods, but nonetheless, the value from that is substantially less. And I guess with that survey that Sophie did, and she's finalising some further analysis at the moment, we were trying to work out would that help us to go to Pharmac to get an idea of what and how to approach that. But I guess that one of the main findings from that was that very few people were probably using the special authority, but maybe that was chicken and egg because there was very little value to it to begin with, so people were interested in using it. So I guess we're trying to work out what the best way ahead with that is still, from the MAP point of view, but also from how we approach Pharmac. Because it's everybody recognises the cost implications, but it's trying to work out the best way to do that.
Just also on that note, I was just going to say as well, as a user of those, I have a celiac child, for our family, it worked really well, and we were devastated to see it go. But I know there's a lot of variations, and I think that for people found different things, and I think it was just highlighted that it's very regional. What you paid for it, what your service was you received, what you had access to. It also came down to your age as well, because whether you were paying for your GP to get your script, it came down to your chemist, whether there was a markup or not. And so it really highlighted, through looking through it more, that not everyone is receiving the same sort of care. And we see that with our follow-ups, but this is another example, unfortunately, that we see that inconsistency. And it's a shame for people like me that it was less than $2 a packet. Oh my goodness, it was so amazing. My chemist was great, and I didn't pay any script fee because my child was young. But not everyone received it like that, and we would love to get more consistency, and MAP are doing what they can, and as a board we do what we can, and if you can keep supporting us, we'll keep trying. But thank you for raising that, because that's one that I know my family feels as well.
Great, well that's all for Q&A that's come in.
I'd just like to add something around the cafes. We've got a gluten-free food safety training certificate that's available online. So if you know anybody working in hospitality, or you've got a favourite cafe and you'd like them to get more of their staff trained up, or anything like that, they can go online and they can access that. And it's a professional development opportunity for people that work in the service, similar to a first aid certificate. So they can go online, they can complete it all, and they'll have more understanding of gluten-free food safety catering.
Well, I think it falls on us to give some gifts to you wonderful board members. Thank you very much.